Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
Keystone, yes or no?
Well, I can't say that because I was there, and
I don't understand that. Why can't you can talk about so many other things? Why can't you talk
because
about
that was a decision that rests with the Secretary of State, and my successor is going to have to make that decision one way or the other. And so I have, said it's inappropriate for me to comment on it. But
all right, welcome back, folks. Hillary Clinton. She can't say yes or no to the Keystone Pipeline for some reason. You just heard the explanation. Joining us now to talk about that and so much more is our friend Stephen Moore. He is now the chief economist for the Great Heritage Foundation. Hey, Stephen.
Hi, Steve. Great to be with you.
Great to see you, and thank you very much for joining us. It's a weird way to start, but let's weigh in on that. There, does it make any sense to you that because there's she's not the Secretary of State anymore, she can't give her opinion on the Keystone?
She's trying to duck every major issue, and this is a huge issue for the American people. It's about jobs, it's about energy security, it's about people's incomes, and at a time, when we have so much turmoil in the Middle East, that so much of it is due to the energy situation and what's going on in Russia, my goodness, Steve, I would think she, as a former Secretary of State, would say, yeah, this is in America's national security interest to get this pipeline built so that we're not so dependent on hostile countries to get our oil and gas and energy.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But anyway, eventually she's going to have to weigh in on it. I don't see her running for president and being asked about it and standing there and saying, well, I can't have an opinion on it. I don't know if that's going to fly. But that aside, let's talk about the implications of what's going on in Iraq and what that means for our economy. I mean, we've seen, I think, at least this morning, oil prices were back down a little bit because there's plenty of oil in Baghdad and wherever else the main places are where the oil stocks are. But what do you see as short and long-term implications for oil prices and then, of course, gas prices here?
Well, if this turmoil continues in Iraq and the oil supply from countries in that region like Iran and Iraq and then potentially Saudi Arabia are disrupted, this has a very negative impact. I mean, we've been to this rodeo before, right, Steve? I mean, we've seen what happens when we have these kinds of disruptions in the supply, where, remember when the gasoline price went over $5 a gallon a few years ago, and electricity prices went through the roof. We could see a recurrence of that. And by the way, every time energy prices rise, it's like a tax on the American consumer, and it plunges the economy into more negative territory. So I think the economic implications of what are happening in Iraq right now are huge, and they could be very destabilizing to our economy at a time when it's so fragile already.
Yeah, and we had the report yesterday that the pump prices averaged $3.68 or 69 cents a gallon, and that was up from the week before. And they're saying that the prices are set to hit a 6-year seasonal high as we head into the summer. Now, you and I recall, and we've talked about this, when Barack Obama was running for president in 2008, he said that he had no problems with gas going up to what it was in Europe, $7, $8 a gallon. He just didn't want it to happen too quickly. Well, I don't know if it's going to get there or not, but if it does, he won't have a problem with it if he stands by his original statements.
Yeah, I think his promise during the 2008 campaign was that his energy policies and environmental policies would necessitate, gasoline prices and energy prices going way higher. And by the way, Steve, wow, he's actually kept one of his campaign promises.
Yeah, lucky us that's the one he kept. Now, not only gasoline prices, and I don't know what's responsible for this, maybe weather, maybe a combination of a lot of things, but the price index for meats, poultry, fish, eggs, all skyrocketed to all-time highs.
Yeah, and the reason for that is when energy prices rise, energy is an input to everything that we produce. So if energy prices rise, just as you said, it reverberates throughout the economy. Food prices go higher, obviously, if energy goes up in cost, because energy is a major component to food production. And I need to make this point because I think it's so important. It is, I would almost use the word unpatriotic for the administration to be going around the country talking about global warming at a time when our economy is getting creamed by these high energy prices, the turmoil in the Middle East. All of this could be alleviated. I mean, could you think of a time when we need the Keystone Pipeline more, or when we need to be drilling and mining for our own energy resources more now, and the president's running around talking about global warming, something that, you know, may affect the economy 50 years from now or 100 years from now. Americans want to see solutions right now. And by the way, and I don't know if you saw this story, a major environmental group, the leader of a group called the Climate Action Project, said that the workers who are going to lose these jobs because of these new EPA mandates, Steve, he said that they are collateral damage in the green agenda. Now, can you imagine if a conservative or Republican called American workers who lose their jobs collateral damage? Yeah. How offensive is that?
That's pretty darn offensive. And Stephen, the fishing industry not happy today over the revelation that the president is planning to create the world's largest ocean preserve in the Pacific. You know, basically, according to the fishermen that I've heard, or the fishermen groups that I've heard, you know, he drew a circle around a whole bunch of ocean in the way out in the Pacific, and said we have to preserve this, kind of arbitrarily picking it and saying it's going to, you know, keep poachers away and illegal fishermen away. But that's not what the fishing industry is saying, and here we go again.
Yeah, it's almost the analog to what we've done in energy, isn't it, Steve? Where in energy, Obama keeps taking more and more land, public lands, out of circulation, where there's a lot of oil and gas and coal. And now what's he doing in the oceans? The same thing, you know, saying you can't fish here. And more areas are being taken off. I mean, this is a fairly radical agenda that we're seeing from this president. He is doubling down, Steve, on his environmental policies. And I would make the case that this is done, A, because he's a zealot, he really believes in this kind of stuff, but B, because the big funders of the Democratic Party today are people like Tom Steyer who are writing the big checks, and they're demanding these kind of green policies that are destroying jobs. So it's not just miners and people in the energy industry. Now it's fishermen who are going to be thrown out of jobs as well.
You mean there's other people giving money out there besides the Koch brothers? Somebody should tell Harry Reid.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you know, Harry Reid calls the Kochs un-American because he stand for the free enterprise system. Meanwhile, the millionaires and billionaires on the left who are trying to disrupt and undermine our free market system are seen as heroes by the press.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let me also ask you about this. GM recalling another 3 million, actually 3.16 million cars to fix an ignition key problem. You know, I don't know if people realize just how many brands GM represents. I mean, you don't go into a dealership, a GM dealership, maybe you do, but there's all, you know, there's Buick, there's all kinds of companies that are GM cars with different brands.
Yeah, you know, aren't you glad we bailed out this company?
Well, that's a great way. That's a great success. Remember that.
We spent tens of billions of dollars as taxpayers bailing out a company that now has looked incredibly derelict in its safety duty. The only thing I would say is at least GM is being held accountable. When are federal agencies or the president or the Veterans Administration or the IRS, when are they ever held accountable for their misdeeds?
Yeah, good question. Let me ask you this. You know, we've heard over the years, maybe it was several years ago, that the Obamas, for instance, on their income taxes, we found out that they gifted their daughters the maximum amount. And I said at the time, I have no problem with that. I have no problem with taking advantage of the tax laws as they, you know, whether they're write-offs or whatever they are. But the president likes to make villains out of people, calling them loopholes, making them into something evil, yet he himself got his tax rate down to around 20%, so he took advantage of loophole after loophole. And now we find out, according to Bloomberg News, headline, wealthy Clintons used trusts to limit estate tax, which they back. So what they're doing is they're putting, you know, part of their properties, whatever they can, I don't know the technical aspects of it, but they're putting it into trust, and this is a tax advantage. This cuts down on their estate tax when they, God forbid, pass away. And the estate tax is, you know, 40%. They say they support it, but they're using every loophole or lots of loopholes that they can legal to get around it. And I have no problem with them using those tax advantages or loopholes to get around it. But then don't make villains out of people who also do.
Now you're talking about the story about the Clintons, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, I read that story, and I was amazed because I was, I've fought against the gift and estate tax, most of my career, because I think it's an immoral tax. I mean, people paid the tax when they earned it. Why should they pay another tax if they build up an estate and want to pass it on to their kids or grandkids? I mean, that's what the American dream is about. But Bill Clinton, he fought against repeal of the estate tax over and over and over again, and now he's trying to find every trick in the books to avoid paying it. Now, this is also true of other people, like Warren Buffett. He says we should have an estate tax, but he doesn't pay he's not going to pay a estate tax.
Yeah, my problem is with the hypocrisy. Absolutely. I mean, I would try to get around it legally, but if I'm going to do that, then don't say you support it. Anyway, Stephen Moore, always great to talk to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, folks, the great Stephen Moore, chief economist at the Heritage Foundation. When we come back, it's Gimme 5. Don't miss it.